But for right now, we're going to go back to our old template of a few winners, a few losers, potentially some upcoming news from this past season or so. So with that being said, I do have, I believe, 5 winners and 5 losers from week 1 that kind of compiled up. And kind of just talking through it. These are kind of just discussion points, kind of just see where the thought process is with these certain players or even this, position group when it comes to not only next week, but the season in total. So with that being said, first winner that I do want to highlight here is Drew Allar. This Drew Allar, it's fun to watch what he was able to do because all the talk behind Drew Allar as a prospect was when he was a quarterback at Penn State. Each year that he started, he honestly was regressing when it came to statistics, mechanics, and just how he performed as a quarterback, as well as a key injury into his final year starting. And then once we get into camp, all the talk about Drew Allar was the fact that they had to redo his entire mechanics, that Mike McCarthy's taking him off to the side and actually working on how to become a quarterback from the ground up. So I think going into the preseason, no one had any sort of expectations for Drew Allar. We know he's a big body, big arm type of player, but no one had expectations. And what happens, he goes out there and he has the best performance from a quarterback and one of the best rookie performances in preseason. So looking at his statistics from a box score perspective, he went 10 of 13, 153 yards, 2 passing touchdowns, 1 rushing touchdown, completion percentage of over 76, and a passer rating of 148.4, which retrospect perfect passer rating is 156.7. But an incredible. I mean, he truly showed it. He, as you see, also had an additional rushing touchdown. So being able to use all the components that he has as a player. His first pass went for 74 yards to Wedgen, their other rookie. Now, of course, that was more of a run after catch situation rather than a deep bomb, but he showed really good poise. I know one of his touchdowns, after that Wedgen reception, was a roll out to the left, moving the pocket, getting him, kind of almost an awkward throw, honestly, where he's off he's not stable in his footwork. And he did what he needed to do and get that touchdown. So, I mean, just in total, the Steelers quarterback room played all fantastic. Mason Rudolph, Bo Howard as well. But I did want to specifically talk about Drew Allar because there's been so much talk in this offseason about his mechanics, how much extra, work he's been getting into, and as well as the entire situation of his college career. Man, at one point he was supposed to be a first round pick and ended up being like a 5th round pick. But he really has shown, and with such a crowded quarterback room, he needs to continue this improvement each week, and he could potentially become that quarterback too, or eventually maybe even that heir to Aaron Rodgers instead of potentially Will Howard. So it's another big thing to keep a lookout. But he definitely played extremely well for his first NFL action, just especially with the fact that they had to do so much mechanical work to his system for so long in this offseason. Another big winner, another rookie quarterback I have, and this is Ty Simpson. I will tell you this from the start. I disliked the pick of Ty Simpson for the Rams. It is obvious that they are in an all-in situation. They went ahead and gave Matthew Stafford an additional 2 years on his contract for 3 more additional years in total. So go and spend a first-round pick on a player that in a perfect situation does not play for 3 years is not necessarily the best. But he put all that aside, he played very, very well. Looking for the box score, of course, 21 from 25, 191 yards, 84% completion rate, passer rating of 125, no turnovers, which is especially important. Ty Simpson's, career at Alabama is very different than what we're seeing in college football right now with NIL, especially, and players changing teams at such a high rate. And so Ty Simpson stayed at Alabama for so long, and eventually his final year came out and only started 12 games, and truly, at times you could tell he started a very low amount of games. Started the season really hot, kind of cooled off, dealt with a little bit of injuries here and there, but his biggest flaw, at least for me, was at times because of his smaller size and maybe a little bit lack of arm strength, he almost seemed to panic in the pocket at times. And this game especially showed that he has the talent to not only stay in the pocket and execute the plays, but complete and be a quarterback at a high level. I mean, 84 completion percentage, 21 to 25 is not just, is not nothing. Like that's really important, especially the 0 turnovers. So just honestly, again, another situation where Ty Simpson is a good quarterback. No doubt about that. There's a reason why he was a first round pick. I did not exactly realize that he was going to come out his first game and just kind of show everyone why he was picked so highly. So this is a thing where they now have insurance, and the biggest controversy to me before this game was that fact that him and Stetson Bennett were almost neck and neck when it came to practice reps, as well as it came to the idea that either one of them could potentially take over for Matthew Stafford. So it's games like this where he can come in and truly solidify himself as like quarterback 2 over someone like Stetson Bennett. This is an incredible performance out of him. Yeah, I mean, again, the only issue is you potentially have to wait. He might be playing preseason games for the next 3 years, or play blowout games, or if, God forbid, if Matthew Stafford goes out with an injury, the back situation. So he played very well for his limited action. Going away from the quarterbacks and going away from players that are actually drafted, I want to talk about Cowboys receiver Camden Brown. This one's fun. 2 touchdowns, 39 yards. Had a very high percentage of separation, 3.4. I think the biggest play here was the fact that he was on the receiving end of a huge Joe Milton throw. It was honestly almost a 2-on-1 jump ball situation. He came down with it. Camden Brown is not necessarily your standard wide receiver build. He's a little bit bigger. He's not always the fastest guy on the field or the best route runner. He's not going to get it open by separation. But if you throw it up there to him, and I think he said this best at one point, he has that determination to come down the ball every single time. And he showed that. He had an incredible receiving touchdown. But especially with a Cowboys team that not only is kind of missing that really big body receiver outside of George Pickens, because I think George Pickens is more than just a contested catch, wide receiver. I think they want to use him more than just that. But also their third wide receiver and down their depth chart is a little questionable. I know Ryan Flores there, and I know he's played well in limited times, but I could see a situation where Camden Brown start of the season becomes their wide receiver 4 and actually has a significant role, especially in red zone situations. And again, you'll see kind of a common thread here of these players if they are able to continue. This is one weekend, but that 1 week adds all the fact of offseason, training camp, OTAs, all this, and all that work is shown through these games. So if Camden Brown's able to continue this performance on a higher scale than just practices, on a league-wide scale, then he could seriously have a significant role in this upcoming Cowboys team and might go from one of those undrafted, kind of unsung heroes to being a real contributor, not just year 1, but down the line as well. Number 4, going back to the opposite, from undrafted player to the 3rd overall pick, I believe, 3rd or 4th, Jeremiah Love. Just reading off the stats, 11 attempts, 58 yards. He also had 3 catches for 14 yards for 72 total scrimmage yards. A few things. All this was basically 1 quarter, if not 2 quarters. I know, yes, he's dealing with a little injury right now, but the biggest conversation before this game coming in was what is the depth chart looking like for this Cardinals running back room? Between Tyler Algier, James Conner, Trey Benson, Bam Knight, Jeremiah Love, they have so many bodies. And so the fact that Jeremiah Love is able to actually come in and with very, very little attempts as an overall game, and is able to come in and truly kind of establish himself as, hey, I am the guy that got drafted so highly. Like, you might have multiple veterans who might have re-signed key players in this running back room. You may have even gone out and grabbed someone like Tyler Algier. But I am truly that guy that is able to come into this room, take the role from these key veterans, and not just guys that are, scrubs. Yes, James Conner's a little bit older, but just 3 years ago, he had a 16 touchdown season. Tyler Algier has had an incredible run when he is a starting running back. Now, unfortunately for Tyler Algier, he's been benched by two extremely talented running backs in Jeremiah Love coming to his upcoming year, and Bijan Robinson, of course. Trey Benson is someone that, if he has not really been able to stay healthy, but he had over 5 yards per carry average in college at Florida State. So it is a significantly crowded room, and the fact that Jeremiah Love was able to come out on as well as a offensive line that was not great with his reps, and a quarterback who he's not going to throw too much. So the fact that he was able to come in and show both his ability on the ground as well as that receiving threat for 72 total yards and a half was fantastic. That was truly great. Of course, he had his signature, hurdle. I've seen a bunch of people kind of looking over his tape and saying that he reminded them of Adrian Peterson. And while I don't necessarily want to throw comparisons out as a former MVP in Adrian Peterson, I can see from a build perspective and a stylized idea mentality as running, I can see situations like that where people can say, no, he is similar to Adrian Peterson. Lastly, for winners, I have Jacoby Lane. This has been extremely fun, kind of just watching and hearing all the reports out of camp. In this game, he, on 3 targets, had 3 receptions, 38 yards, 1 touchdown. This is fun because all the reports, and even going to the draft process and kind of watching his film, Jacoby Lane is that kind of bigger built, fluid athlete. He reminds me a lot of like a Keenan Allen type of build, where he's a little bit taller, kind of can play a little bit in that slot, outside if possible. Not the fastest, maybe not the best route runner, but you can just tell he's a very fluid athlete with very soft hands. And with this current wide receiver group in Baltimore, you have your bona fide wide receiver one. You just paid him, and Zay Flowers. Do I think he deserves that $35 million per year? That's a different conversation. But he has shown multiple-time Pro Bowler. You have Rashad Bateman, who just re-signed last offseason for a lot of money, has not necessarily shown that ability. Rashad Bateman hasn't. This past year had under 300 total yards receiving. There was some injuries, inconsistencies, but they've had DeAndre Hopkins. They need that big body receiver. And then in this draft, they go and get Jacoby Lane and Elijah Surratt, and both of them played extremely well. Jacoby Lane, I think he has kind of come out a little bit more with this offseason, and I think partially that is because of his personality, as well as kind of the internet media behind him. One of the biggest stories, of course, was the week before, where he, against his own team, the Ravens, went up against one-on-ones with 3 separate corners, and all 3 of those corners went down with injuries. And this, obviously, that's not good from a Ravens perspective because their corners are already very injury prone. But that's a lot of excitement coming out from another potential offensive weapon in Jacoby Lane. And then so he goes into this game and he does what he needs to do. He becomes that, again, big fluid body, big athlete in that slot position especially. And he's also has those soft hands and was shown that ability. I believe it was an inside slants to not only catch the ball, but use that big body that he has to cross the line. I do think both Jacoby Lane and Elijah Surratt have a big role in this upcoming season, and I do think Jacoby Lane has solidified himself almost as that slot receiver. I think it's between him and Des Walker, who has 7 career catches for 4 career touchdowns. Like that's incredible efficiency, but that's not the true story behind him. I do think Jacoby Lane is exactly what this Ravens team needs when it comes to, that young athlete who has as well experience of a quarterback that needs to extend plays and be able to continue running your route and find ways to make plays. So it's another player I'm very excited about for the rest of this offseason. I know, and the rest of this preseason. I know through joint practices, there's been some commotion come out where he hasn't necessarily looked the best in one-on-ones. But again, that's what you're going to get when you have a bigger body receiver who isn't the fastest or the best route runner. He's not going to consistently win one-on-one battles, not in a game. So, but with that being said, though, he did have a very limited role in the first preseason game, but with the limited role that he had, he did exceed expectations. Now, those were the winners. Now we go over to our losers. And this one hurt. First one is Cam Ward. Obviously, last year's first overall pick. He come in. You have an entire new, kind of wide receiver and weapons. You bring in Wan'Dale Robinson, Cardinal Tate. You still have Calvin Ridley, Chima Dike, Alec Iomanner, Gunnar Helm, Daniel Bellinger. These are all kind of your new weapons. Don't really change much on your offensive line. And then obviously you bring in an entire new coaching staff. Last year it was Brian Callahan for a while, and then obviously he got fired, and then it's just kind of a downward spiral. This year you go and bring in Brian Daboll as your offensive coordinator, Robert Saleh as your head coach. You bring in an actual mentality to this team, and obviously Cam Ward did not do extremely well. 5 for 12, under a 42% completion rate, 48 yards. So that is less than 10 yards per completion. No touchdown, 3 and outs, passer rating of 53.5. When you watch this game and you're watching Cam Ward, you can just tell that he still feels so uncertain about the offensive line. And there are times where he has almost, they call him phantom pressure, where he is rolling out when there's no need to. And part of that is, part of it's a few different things. It's his play style. Ever since, they're in Miami and before, he was someone that, tried to be an improviser, which works to an extent, except for the fact that when you're an improviser, you will have high highs of extending the play, making plays down the field, but also having the low lows of having a situation where you try to extend a play and end up making a bigger mistake. So it felt like Cam Ward had a quick trigger this first preseason game of escaping the pocket too early, which then led him to consistently be on the run and have harder percentages of completions. And then there was also some, of course, accuracy issues that he honestly didn't really have last year. So again, as he is a big loser, there's also still the idea, of course, that it is a new offensive system. He's still learning with new weapons. I know there was, Cardinal Tate had a opportunity to get a touchdown at one point, and there was not necessarily miscommunication, but there was not good teaching skills that allowed Cardinal Tate to get open on that kind of out route on the in the red zone. So there's things that they are going to have to work through. Cam Ward will, Brian Daboll, of course, will, and it might take a little bit more time than some people were expecting with the Titans this year. Next, we have the Browns quarterback situation. I'm going to start off with Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson went 11 for 15, 126 yards, really high completion percentage of 73.0, no touchdowns, no interceptions, but he did have a lost fumble. this fumble was pretty bad. Tried to step up in the pocket and not sure if a D lineman hit his arm or if his arm hit an offensive lineman, but the ball kind of went straight up in the air. Obviously, he lost it. When Deshaun Watson played, he did show a lot of good anticipation with some of his throws. He, of course, did have some inaccuracies, but he was confident in the pocket. It seemed like he was very quick as well with his decision making. But with Deshaun Watson, you are going to have those plays like that lost fumble where things just kind of go out of control and you're not expecting, a big turn-worthy play, and that's what's going to happen. Back-to-back, big-time leg and lower body surgeries. Deshaun Watson's not going to be able to extend plays and run like he once was with the Texans. And that as, when you watch him, he's not the same quarterback he once was. But in the pocket, he did show a lot of promise. And honestly, he showed more improvement than Shedeur Sanders did. Shedeur went 6 for 11, 79 yards, completion percentage of 54.5, no touchdowns, 1 interception, also a few sacks taken. That interception was rough. It was a significant overthrow on felt like a 15-yard crosser, significant overthrow where the safety behind them is actually the one that ended up picking him off. As well as Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward, to me, kind of fall in the same, improviser kind of type of quarterback where they are going to try to extend plays, which, as we saw with a lot of games last year, that led Shedeur Sanders get sacked quite a lot. He's someone that does tend to hold on to the ball a little bit more than he needs to, which will allow him to take more sacks. Which again, that idea does bring up the fact that he has that ability to kind of play off the script and potentially could have higher percentages of, incredible plays like he did. He did show some last year, but it's kind of the same thing where he doesn't feed the pressure well in the pocket. His pocket presence is not fantastic. His decision making usually is quick, but it's usually a snap read. So before he takes a snap, he kind of has an idea of what his first read's going to be, which leads to the extended time in the pocket, trying to improvise something else, and that leads to these high sacks. When he does have an open receiver, you still see sometimes where he has those big turn-worthy plays like that interception. I think right now, I know Shedeur Sanders is currently taking quarterback 1 snaps in camp this week. I think they're kind of switching off every day. But to me, like I said earlier, earlier this offseason, I do think Deshaun Watson will end up being the starter. And out of this game, there's nothing that's taking that away. Both these quarterbacks were not great. I know Dylan Gabriel also didn't play super that well. If I'm a Browns fan, I am protesting to see Taylor Green. I don't think he's any better than them, but he's a different type of quarterback. He's not someone who's going to stay in the pocket. He might show more flashes, more potential, and just something exciting. I want to see Taylor Green. I want to see this huge, versatile quarterback who has this massive arm and incredible legs. I want to see something else out of this quarterback room. Because so far, Deshaun Watson and Shedeur Sanders, it's not pretty, honestly. It's not great. Next, I'll bring up Tesla. This one's interesting as well because Isaac was a rookie last year who did not play a bunch, but when he did, he consistently went in and had insane catches, insane highlight touchdowns. Going into this year, you are fully expecting him to take over that wide receiver 3. Now, obviously, you have Amon-Ra at slot. He's your primary receiver. J-Mo is your outside kind of deep threat. And Isaac Tesla is going to be your kind of one-on-one jump ball receiver with Sam Laporta taking more of that middle routes, as well as Amon-Ra and Gibbs, of course. So you're expecting Isaac Tesla to potentially not get many targets, but you're expecting him to come down with a majority of those receptions. And he didn't. He had 3 targets, which of course is not entirely a lot. Out of those 3 targets, 0 catches, 0 yards, and he had a dropped pass in his hands that, of course, led to an interception. So it's a situation where he got significant snap counts in a preseason game, 22 snap counts as a wide receiver, you give him some opportunities through catches, which, again, like Jacoby Lane, that's the same amount of. Here's the difference. Jacoby Lane had 3 targets, 3 catches, 30-plus yards, touchdown. Isaac Tesla had 3 targets, 0 catches, 0 yards, and an interception that completely was because of him. I'm not saying Isaac Tesla is worse than Jacoby Lane. I'm not saying Jacoby Lane is better than Isaac Tesla. I'm just saying Isaac had a very poor week 1 or preseason week 1 performance, especially for a guy you're truly expecting a lot from this year in that red zone. That's something that the Lions had a lot of issues with last year. So you're expecting him to take an additional step after a really explosive rookie year. And this first game was not it. Not at all. Not only were you negative with your catches, but you actively allowed and gave away possession of your offense and allowed the other team to take advantage of a true mistake that you had dropping the ball. Not great. Another loser I have for you is this Eagles offense. The Philadelphia Eagles offense has been a conversation point for a while for a lot of people. They are consistently changing offense coordinators, those coordinators getting hired by different people. Shane Steichen's a huge example of that. Or if it's just a situation where they're consistently underperforming and getting fired the year before. Kind of like last year. So this offense comes in and total 159 yards, which is not great. They go on third downs, they go 0 for 9. You make your money on third downs. You make money as a professional with how well you play on third down. They went 0 for 9. They had 7 punts. They had a net passing yards of 83. That means that they almost had more negative sack yards from getting their quarterback sacked than actual passing yards. They had 1 more first down than punts the entire game. An average 3.1 average yards. So that does not include just running plays, but that includes both in the air as well. They truly just struggled to sustain drives, and doesn't matter who was in there. They just failed to generate consistent production. This is a huge issue because obviously Jalen Hurts did not play that much. I think the entire starting offense hasn't, but there's been consistent communication throughout this offseason of, AJ Brown's gone. So is Jalen Hurts going to be able to kind of come back to what he was, or is he even truly an elite quarterback, or is he just a situational, is he like a game manager that has a very good talent of rushing touchdowns? Saquon Barkley, after coming off a massive offensive player of the year, award year, he comes off last year and is not nearly as efficient. His production was significantly lower. You trade away AJ Brown. You finally are telling Devontae Smith that, like, hey, this is your team. You're a guy that's consistently had 1,000 yards. Can you become that actual wide receiver 1? You go out and you trade for Dontavius Wicks. Can he become that wide receiver 3? You go and get Marquise Brown. You bring back Dallas Goedert. Eli Stowers you draft. Like, these are a bunch of players. And of course, you go and you draft Mekhi Lemon, who is dealing with injuries right now. But this entire offense is different. Jason, Jordan Mailata has dealt with some injuries. Landon Dickerson has dealt with injuries, as well as the idea of potentially retiring, as same as Lane Johnson just said that this might be his last year. Tyler Steen, Cam Jurgens both have not played as well as they've hoped. This offense could very easily kind of crumble because not only the changes of personnel, but changes of coaches, they could crumble under expectations, or they could explode. But the showing, again, I know it wasn't majority first team offense, but regardless of who you have on the field, you have the same mentality when it comes to your team. You have the same principles, same fundamentals. You want to produce the same way. You don't want that much of a drop off. So the fact that the Eagles come in and honestly just play awful on offense, it's not a great sign in this first week. Now, of course, just like I've said with everyone, this is just week 1 of the preseason. There's 2 more games to potentially come up and show out or continue this downward trajectory. So it's the whole thing where are you going to fall after this preseason? Lastly, number 5, this is the Bengals offensive line. Throughout the game, they did not play horrible, but it's mostly the fact that after multiple years of Joe Burrow dealing with injuries, there's been all these talks about how they have to go and they had to upgrade his offensive line. You invest first round picks, Darius Mims, big time contracts, Orlando Pace. There's just this whole thing where you're expecting this Bengals offensive line to finally kind of come together. And very, very first play of the preseason, a blitz is sent to them and it's not fully picked up, and Joe Burrow gets hit hard. And especially with a guy that has dealt with various injuries and he has even come out with potentially retiring, that's not the way you want to start off the game, with a big time, sack to your franchise quarterback who has dealt with various injuries because of situations like that. They're not able to fully protect Joe Burrow. As well as throughout the game, they allowed 6 pressures, which is not too bad. Again, one sack. That one sack was the first play of the game that has led to one other quarterback hits on Joe Burrow. 68% pass block win percentage is not bad. Not bad at all. You're obviously not going to win every pass blocking rep. What is a little scary, though, or at least a little lackluster, is the fact that they had a 54.2 run grade, which is below average, especially a team that has at times struggled to run the ball since, basically the Super Bowl run with Joe Mixon. Chase Brown did eclipsing 1,000 yards last year, but if you looked at the first half of the season, he was extremely inefficient. That's because the consistent amount of times that he was hit before the line of scrimmage was awful. And then, of course, second half last year, he was able to kind of come back up and able to become a very effective running back. This week 1 preseason. Majority of these are kind of rookies, second-year players. They are fighting for potentially snaps at the regular season practice squads. One game should never fully entail a player both positively and negatively. All these players are being completely watched throughout the offseason, OTAs, training camp, joint practices. Everything that they do is being noted. These games are kind of the last little bit that I take in when figuring out who's on the rosters. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Thank you for tuning in, and I will see you guys next time.